Om. Namaste. We will start the class with our chanting, and today, being Pradosham, we will do a small meditation on Lord Shiva and start the class. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavaghay Tejasvinavadhetamastu ma Vidvishavaghay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Om Sadyo Jatam Prapathyami Sadyo Jataya Vai Namo Namaha Bhave Bhave Nati Bhave Bhavasvamam Bhavotbhavaya Namaha Vamadevaya Namo Jyeshtaya Namah Shrestaya Namo Rudraya Namah Kalaya Namah Kalavikaranaaya Namo Balavikaranaaya Namo Balaya Namo Balapramadanaaya Namah Sarvabhutadamanaya Namo Manonmanaya Namaha अघोरेभ्यो घोरघोरतरेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यो नमस्ते अस्तु रुद्ररूपेभ्यः तत्पुरुषाय विद्महे महादेवाय धीमहि तन्नो रुद्रः प्रचोदयात् ईशानः सर्वविद्यानामीश्वरः सर्वभूतानां ब्रह्माधिपतिर्ब्रह्मणोऽधिपतिर्ब्रह्मा शिवो मे अस्तु सदाशिवोम् ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम नमस्ते अस्तु भगवन् विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्र्यंबकाय त्रिपुरान्तकाय त्रिकालाग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः। हर हर नमः पार्वतीपतये हर हर महादेव. Okay, so we were discussing the first shloka of Sadhana Panchakam. I gave an introduction to the whole thing and the perspective and the approach that we are going to take in discussing the topic of Nishta using the structure of progress provided by the text Sadhana Panchakam composed by Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya. So, Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam Taduditam Karmaswanushtiyatam Tena Ishashya Vidhiyatam Apachitihi Kamye Matistyajyatam Papaugha Paridhuyatam Bhavasukhe Doshonusandhiyatam Atmecha Vyavasiyatam Nijagrihat Turnam Vinirgamyatam. That is the first shloka. Study the Veda daily. Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam Tad Uditam Karmaswanushtiyatam. Perform the rituals and the various practices and the karmas, the various spiritual actions, activities prescribed in the Veda in the proper manner, according to the way it is prescribed. And do them with an worshipful attitude and surrender the results to Ishvara. Give up your tendency to and the practice of doing the rituals that are meant for achieving desires. The rituals propelled by desires, spiritual practices and rituals propelled by desires, give them up. Then, by living like this, in a spiritually liberating life, in a life that is dedicated to the liberating spirituality, a religious life dedicated to the way of liberating spirituality, by living like this, may you clear the cloud of or the lumps and the mass of negative karmas that you have accumulated over many lives, the effect of the negative karmas in the mind, which will result in a sattvic mind, in a quality of mind that is predominantly sattvic, called the pure mind, chitta shuddhi, which will result in chitta shuddhi. So using that mind, may you contemplate on the inherent defect in object based enjoyments, all the so called happy situations that we look for, that we look after, that we look up to, or we hanker after, the various so called joys of this life that you achieve through the body and the mind, through acquiring and preserving and using your senses and mind and the body. You enjoy the various pleasures and the so called happy situations of life. You want to achieve them and to enjoy them, you know. So all those various achievements that you call as happy achievements, the moments of happiness that you want to achieve, contemplate on the inherent defectiveness of those achievements, and thereby see the inherent defect in looking for happiness in things and situations. Develop the maturity that will be able to see the inherent stupidity or the defect or the small mindedness and the pointlessness in hankering after situation and thing dependent happiness. Experiential happiness. Bhavasuke means experiential happiness, both in this life and afterlife. Then, what do I do? I am naturally propelled to seek happiness. Seeking happiness is the one common denominator for all the living beings. Then, what do I do? Then, how do I get happiness? Am I supposed to be depressed and sad? No. Seek what is eternal happiness, which is your own true nature. Atmecha vyavasiyata. Strive to understand and appreciate Atmecha. Atma Icha means the desire to know the self. So strive to cultivate the desire for the eternal, which is in the form of your own true self, not this little functional individuality you are talking about. Because you have studied the Veda and all that, and you have lived a religious life that is based on the Veda, you have heard here and there in the Veda about Atma. Tarati Shokam Atmavite, the one who knows the self crosses the ocean of limitations and sorrow. Brahmavid apnoti param. You have studied all that. So think about it. Cultivate a desire for the eternal. Enough of all these various little small successes and happiness and uh, small joys, the temporary joys, time bound joys that are promised by the scripture, and the joys that are promised by various worldly attainments and the scriptural attainments, both the joys promised by the world and the joys promised in the other world by the various uh, declarations and revelations in the Veda. Like if you do this special ritual every day, you will attain heaven, you will get the post of the of a demigod, and then you can enjoy, you can have amrita, you can be eternal. That eternal is only relatively eternal compared to our lifespan here. So it looks like eternal, but it is not eternal, because somewhere else in the Veda we see that there is no manifest phenomena is eternal, including the demigods are not eternal. Here I am using the word demigod because I have reserved the word God, the big letter G, God, for Ishvara, which is the Supreme Being itself, which is actually our own true nature. But for the purpose of, before the one learns, for the purpose of teaching, we call it as God, Ishvara. Okay. So, all the manifest beings will experience death or annihilation at some point of time. There is no escape from that. Even the heavens will come to an end. Even the demigods and the deities will come to an end at the end of Kalpa. So there is a life cycle for all the various dimensions of existence. So if we are talking about, see the defect in the heavenly enjoyments, what about these worldly enjoyments? These worldly enjoyments are nothing compared to heavenly enjoyment. We see in Taittiriya Upanishad, in Anandavalli, it talks about the measure of 1 unit of human happiness. The definition of 1 unit of human happiness, if you read that in Taittiriya Upanishad, that itself is impossible for most people to attain. 100 times that human happiness is one being called Manushya Gandharva. 100 times that is Deva Gandharva. 100 times that is the Surya, Varuna, Indra, and all that. 100 times that is the Brahma's happiness. Like that, there is a scale. 100 times the happiness of the Gandharvas is the same level of happiness is that of the Pitrus and the ascended ancestors. Like that, we have a huge, hierarchy of happiness. But the point is, at every stage, he says the same happiness belongs to the one who lives according to the Veda and one who has cultivated desirelessness. The same happiness belongs to the person who lives according to the Vedic injunctions and has cultivated the dispassion. At every stage he says that. uh, Shrotriyasya akamaha tasya. It says, though if you are a Shrotriya and if you are without kama, the same happiness belongs to you. And then it gives a quantum leap to the infinite eternal happiness of the Brahmavid, the one who knows Brahman or one who knows oneself as Brahman. It is beyond words. Like that it goes in Anandavalli of Taittiriya Upanishad. In every Veda you take, in every Upanishad you take, there is a talk about this, and there is a talk about eternity, freedom from birth and death, freedom from limitation, and one being the same as the eternal, and all that. So, having been exposed to these declarations, why don't you cultivate a desire to attain that instead of all this? That's what he says. Parallelly cultivate the desire for this. While you are seeing the defect in the limited enjoyments, cultivate the desire for the unlimited. Yeah. So that is what this full shloka is. So the first three, study the Veda daily and live the religious life as prescribed according to the Veda, and perform all your actions, the to be done actions as an offering to the Lord. Perform your disciplines of restraint also as an offering to the Lord, and refrain from actively pursuing your desires, especially using spiritual tools to achieve your desires. All this is aimed at the quality of mind that is required to develop an objective appreciation of the limitations in the various enjoyments. So this is the goal. This is the goal. So that you develop a level of discrimination and dispassion. That is the goal. So keeping this goal in mind, now let us revisit the entire so-called religious spiritual life that we talked about. For the people who are in the Vedic tradition, it is very clear, because this sadhana panchakam was given to the group of disciples who are already Vaidikas, who are already on the path, who already have Shraddha in Veda as Pramana, in Guru's words, and who have studied and who have understood the teachings of Veda to a great extent, and who also are living a very, very rigorously regulated religious life as prescribed in the Veda. So this entire teaching is given to those people. So he already started with Vedo Nityam Athiyatam. But we have to, in the last class, I had to give an introduction to why Veda, why it is important, at least have some kind of an link, indirect link, at least to something that is connected with the Veda through wherever you are learning, through the teacher you have, like that. I gave a very extremely watered down version. So today I will water it down even more. Now, giving a broad spectrum interpretation as a liberating spiritual life, living a liberating spiritual life that is based on the Vedic religion somehow or the other, because this is the original spirituality that is still available. This basically that is based on revealed true spiritual knowledge. If you say this is not the Vedic tradition, then we can do an appraisal of this. If you are already part of some kind of a spiritual group or a tradition, you are living already a religious life that is not Vedic, then how to know whether it is correct or not? Then what we do, if you are not living according to the Veda and the Vedic system, at least have the Vedic body of knowledge as a benchmark. For example, there are these Wiccans and the Druids and the Celtic spiritual, in the native European native spiritual seekers, the New Age movement, right? And the European native spirituality, they are trying to revive all those old traditions which have been completely annihilated by the monotheistic cult. You know which one? So those people, when they are reviving that, they are trying to get some insights and inputs from the Indian spirituality. They look up to Hinduism, they look up to the Vedic tradition and here and our texts here, and then they try to derive some kind of practical points from which they can apply for their own lost tradition. You know, this basically is a lost tradition. They don't have it. So when they're trying to revive it, how to understand the principles and how to revive the practices, they are trying to, pick up some points from here. They try to do that. It's an emotional thing. I don't want to comment too much on that. It's a thing about their identity, emotion. It's all it's all a very sensitive topic. So I don't want to dig too much into that. But what I'm trying to say is, no matter what you are following, whatever spiritual practice you are following, keep Veda and the Vedic tradition as a benchmark. The principles, the broad governing principles, the fundamental principles. When you discuss with a certain a teacher, me or somebody similar, or even somebody with a better grounding and who has also an exposure to the various spiritual practices and who has a more broad mind to discuss and who understands the subtle world to certain extent, has a deep original insight regarding the subtle world. With such a person, with such a guru, you can discuss how to how to optimize or how to prioritize certain aspects and how to check and how to benchmark your practice to see where it stands and see how you can adopt the fundamental principles from here, whether what you are doing is an agreement or not, and all. But assuming that you are doing a certain, living a religious life or even a spiritual non-religious life, that is a problem. But what can I do? I have to accommodate those people also, because many practices are very useful, practically speaking. For example, let us take Reiki or pranic healing. They have their own structure. And these healing schools, they have their own structure and they have their own practices, their own visualizations. It does contribute to some kind of concentration. Twin heart meditation, for example, it does contribute to a certain level of sattva in the mind. It does increase attention to a better quality. It does help people to manage their likes and dislikes. It does give a certain quality of chitta shuddhi. So we cannot deny that all those results are perceivable. There have been a lot of objective empirical research on the effect of those techniques. Transcendental meditation, for example, there has been a lot of neurobiological research on the practitioners, and they say how the impact is. A lot of new age practices are practically seen as beneficial for mental health and overall well-being, which is nothing but one aspect of sattva. Increasing sattva what will increase the sense of well-being and inner harmony and all that. So that is fine. So assuming that, so now let me try to see how we can take take this approach of a liberating spirituality into all this practice. One main point that I would like to address is, in all the schools of spirituality today, especially in the new age, there is one big problem. In every spiritual school, there will be some basic problems that come as a side effect of the mind that follows that school of spirituality. There is a certain quality of mind that makes you follow. For example, a very ritualistic person who is very devoted to action and all that, a very action oriented and a ritualistic person generally tends to have an attitude of blind faith, and uh, generally tends to overlook the human component and overemphasize the technical component, and might end up becoming penny wise and pound foolish. This kind of possibilities there. This is a general ritualistic mind. They will not think about the philosophical uh, relevance of something. They will not think about the philosophical relevance of something or what it leads me to further. They'll be stuck in the same routine. So there is you do some things and then you feel good about it. You see that you have accomplished. You have a sense of feel good about yourself. You develop an identity based on that way of life, and that's about it. There is no thinking further. So this is a certain defect in the ritualistic mind. So similarly, in the new age spirituality, I don't know, it's a big word I'm using. It's a big umbrella term that brings in all the things together. Unfortunately, a great proportion of yoga practitioners also fall under that. Hatha yoga, various versions of hatha yoga. There are all these brand names for yoga. They also fall under that. The defect I see is feel good spirituality. Feel good spirituality and intuitive spirituality. Right? These two. This is the main problem. Why it is a problem is because they decide the effectiveness of a practice based on how it makes them feel at that moment. Oh, I'm not comfortable with it. It's making me feel small. It's making me feel bad. It's making me, I feel some pain here. So they're constantly devoted to comfort. So what they are seeking is comfort, karma, pleasure, comfort and pleasure. That is what they try to seek, because the everyday life is so far away from dharma. There is so much of adharma in our everyday routines and life. There is a lot of side effects in the form of imbalances and suffering. So even the basic comfort, emotional comfort, physical comfort, energetic harmony, all these things have become a a rarity, a difficult thing to experience. These are all considered as basic. When you live a dharmic life, this basic comfort is taken care. So that you are available to think about higher things. It is something like poverty. It's a spiritual poverty. Because of spiritual poverty, like these people who are in famine, if they are struggling even for a small piece of loaf of bread or a small handout in a refugee camp, that little food is that comes once in a few days, that becomes such a big deal. All their mind goes around that. It's not their fault. It is how nature is. So when you are spiritually deprived and you are in a society plus a life situation and a way of life that is spiritually poor, that is completely in spiritual poverty, what the first thing one tends to seek in any practice is a sense of inner comfort. It's totally understandable. But what is important is that is not the goal. And sometimes one has to grow out of that, and one has to rise above that and think of something more than immediate comfort. We talk about two levels of wellness: immediate feel good, it's called praise, and a long term wellness, a lasting wellness and happiness and a lasting harmony, is called shreyas. Usually in life, all those things that contribute for long term happiness and harmony are usually difficult in the beginning. Usually, need not be all the time, but usually. So what we have to do is all these new age, all these people, they have to develop a pramana buddhi. Instead of trying to hunt for various practices, they keep on shifting. They keep on shifting from one school to another school. They're constantly in search of a feel good moment. So instead of making my spiritual search and quest constantly driven by the feel good impulse, the desire to feel good. Desire to feel good is not to be denied entirely, but that should not be the driving force. Pramana buddhi means I will have to learn to objectively see if that knowledge is authentic and what it promises immediately and in long term. Sometimes the very definition of tapasya, austerity, is you are challenging your comfort zone right now, because your comfort zone, my comfort zone, we challenge our comfort zone right now because our current comfort zone is a result of habituation, and the result of all the lump of good and bad karmas that we have, and the result of our unconscious programming. Because of that, I am able to find comfort in some things, but usually what I find comfort in is not good for me, or it does not have any lasting impact. At the least, it doesn't have any lasting transformational impact, and at worst, it is bad for me. So this is how this comfort works. For example, let us take the smoker. A smoker is initially uncomfortable with smoking. This is tapasya gone bad, tapasya in the wrong situation. For first 1 or 2 months, the non-smoker habituates himself or herself because of the peer pressure and all that and the wrong ideas, a kind of a habituation to inhale the smoke and not and to overcome that rejection inside the lungs and to breathe out, so that it allows the body to absorb the toxins and the nicotine or whatever and get that kick. And then that kick is initially not nice. The nicotine effect creates dizziness, nausea. It's not a good thing. But somehow the person pushes through that and then comes to a point where the non-smoker has become a smoker and is able to enjoy that toxicity. The body is conditioned so that it creates a certain insensitive zone that allows the brain to enjoy the toxicity, and the person is able to feel good after smoking. It's something they work hard for. If you really think about it, you'll see uh, how intelligent it is, within quotes. How it's really not a smart thing to do, but people do that. So this is the opposite. This is anti tapasya. So after having habituated to that, they like it. That this is a new thing. So you adopt. This body is able to do that even for bad things. Imagine how much more beautiful it would be if you can condition the system to find comfort in what is truly good. So what happens is we are programmed to find comfort in what is immediately pleasing to the senses, immediately pleasing to the emotional conditioning, and what is immediately pleasing to the ego. In different levels, we have comfort zones: physical comfort zone, um, energetic comfort zone. You know, so there are, when you do pranayama, when you find a new level of attainment, it will feel a little unsettling because the whole feel it's very new. When you start becoming a vegetarian or a vegan, and then when you start practicing asanas and all that hatha yoga, you have a different sense of your whole body feels different. They start panicking immediately. They don't feel so gross anymore. They don't feel the body much. So I heard from certain activities they are used to do are not the same. They are not contributing to the same well-being anymore. For example, you can't do when you are when you are developing a fine system through hatha yoga. You cannot do all these CrossFit and all these anaerobic exercises and heavy bodybuilding and muscle building and all that, and high calorie food. That is a completely different metabolic quality. But when you do hatha yoga practice and pure vegetarian diet or vegan diet, no intoxicants, no caffeine and all that, that's a completely different kind of sattva that we are taking the body to. And this kind of body is capable of something else. Like for example, when you are training for a short distance sprinting, you have to develop one kind of a body and the muscle system. When you are training for long distance running like a marathon, 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, or a marathon, you will have to develop a different kind of a muscle system, right? So similarly, it comes in spirituality also. When we are going to start living or getting used to and training ourselves for a liberating spiritual life, we will have to see what this has to give to me. Liberating spiritual life, the goal is liberation. If I have decided on the goal of liberation, then I will have to make my body, my prana, my mind, my emotions, and my ego structure, I have to make this comfortable to adopt to this spiritual way of life as it is given by the masters of whatever is the spiritual school that I am following. So I have to change myself. I cannot keep changing from one technique to another technique until I find a feel good. Oh, finally I found my thing. I found my school of yoga. Finally I found my ashram. That lets me have a smoke once in a while. I found an ashram that where the everybody is hugging each other and we are good. Where I can always practice yoga along with my dog yoga, cat yoga. There is even beer yoga. People are so addicted to their comfort zone, and then the teachers are so desperate to get a crowd that there is beer yoga. You have to take a sip of a beer and then tune to that, and then that is used for feel good. Then there is hot yoga because your body is full of toxins. You don't want to change your lifestyle, but you want to create a small context where you are in a heated room. You sweat a lot, and then you pump steam for 90 minutes, and you call that yoga, and which is not recommended in any hatha yoga text, right? So all these American jokes we have and all these problems are there. They're all there to provide you with a comfort. It becomes a service industry. So when I want to take to liberating spirituality, I need to stop shopping in the so-called spiritual service industry. So that would be the equivalent of karma kanda. You know? So the ritualistic religion, the person is always trying to find quick fixes. Oh, I am not having a child. Let me do some ritual and some prayer to have a child. Oh, I am having a bad transit. Let me run from temple to temple to do some, rituals to please certain deities so that I am not in trouble. Oh, I want to get married, so let me do this ritual to get some special grace and invoke some divinities so that I will get married soon. Oh, let me do some voodoo to get a boyfriend. Let me do some voodoo. The worst part is let me do some kind of spiritual rituals called abhichara prayoga. Basically, in our common terminology, let me use some voodoo to separate that couple because I am jealous of this girl getting that boyfriend. She was my friend all this time. Suddenly, she doesn't talk to me anymore. So let me do some voodoo to separate her from her newly acquired boyfriend so that she will have nobody and then we both can be friends again. I see all this. This is all ritualistic mind, basically. The equivalent of this in the Vedic tradition. This mind is everywhere. Whether you are in Vedic tradition or out of Vedic tradition, human mind is human mind. So what I have to do is kamye matistyajatam, give up going behind desire oriented, desire motivated spiritual activities. This is what is talking about that, right? So this ritualistic attitude that finds quick fixes, you know, for my immediate sense of comfort. So that would be a combination of uh, doing spiritual practices to feel good and doing various techniques to find some quick fixes without addressing the fundamental problem. So this kind of approach, I can call it as an immature spiritual set of, an immature spiritual life. Immature spiritual life is that which is where we are looking for spiritual tools for the sake of emotional comfort, physical comfort, some feel good, and getting some high. This is another thing. This is kama. Kamya karma, kamya matisya. Give up doing desire oriented spirituality. One more thing I see is getting interesting experiences. Cannabis meditation, ayahuasca ritual. You want to, somebody goes there and comes back and says transformative experience. The transformative experience will last for 1 or 2 months. They are in a high, they're walking on cloud nine for a few days or a few weeks, and after that, they're back to ground. They're not able to face the challenges from practical life, and their desire and the fears and everything remains the same. So you're always going behind some kind of a high. There is ayahuasca ritual that is a little more comprehensive because at least it is a shamanic, and then you have these some smoking special herbs to get some kind of a high, and then or you do some holotropic breathing or some other thing to release, and then you go for conversations where you are releasing the emotions. This is all not a problem, but the problem is when you overdo them and when the means becomes the goal. Like a relationship, a relationship is an end, not an end in itself. These are various means for various ends. For example, uh, satsanga, going to a satsanga is supposed to take you to the next step. If you're doing meditation, the meditation should have connected to a purpose. Meditation is a tool. Meditation is not an end in itself. Doing this 1.5 hours of hatha yoga, for example, with a certain level of stretching, it releases some if you're doing it in a very intense way, it releases endorphins, you feel good, right? So you are not making this practice into a drug, a feel good drug. So you're waiting to clear your schedule so that you can go for this class, and then you feel good, you make some friends, and then you have a gang and you feel good about it. This is all fine, but these are all to be understood as karma, as desire and pleasure. These are not spiritually transforming. This may provide a context where you are able to nourish a spirituality. It keeps you at a certain level of comfort, and it probably helps you to get rid of certain negative effects of the adharmic life that we live otherwise. And that's it. That is the end. It does not take you further. So we have to recognize the quick fix spirituality and feel good spirituality and spiritual practices that are meant for having experiences. So those experiences are not an end in itself. Those experiences may become a motivating factor for you to consider as valuable something that is higher than your routine, something that is over and above this normal terrestrial life, that gives you a sense of an open attitude towards higher things in life. That's all that experience is going to give us. It's nothing more, right? So the experiences that you get from certain practices, you are not doing the practices for the sake of experiences. The experiences come on the way. It is something like I take a train, I get a window seat, I'm going to a destination, I see some nice things through the window. I cannot get down in an in between station to go and live in that nice, wherever I saw the nice scenery. That nice scenery is nice probably only through the window. If I really go to that nice place, that forest or whatever I see, that meadow or a forest or a valley that I see from the train, if I really go to that valley, I will be probably only fighting mosquitoes there. I know mosquitoes, bugs, and then some wild animals. Those are nice on the way, and they are nice only when you leave them and move along. Move further towards. So you took up the spiritual practice for some other goal. So having clarity and commitment to what you are actually striving after. So this is where the framework is provided by the Shastra. So when we understand the framework from Vedanta, it gives us a perspective, to the right perspective with which we can appreciate all the spiritual practices in the world in their rightful position. We need not overemphasize something. We need not poo poo and dismiss something as completely useless and stupid. Everything can be appreciated in its rightful place and with its right level of value, and we will be able to move ahead and go further in our spiritual progress when we understand the framework given by Vedanta. So the first shloka gives us the framework. Whatever spiritual practices that you are doing are meant for cultivating the purity of mind, the sign of which is viveka and vairagya, objectivity and dispassion. Objectivity means seeing things for what they actually are, seeing things as they are, and seeing your functional self as what it is, seeing your body for what it is, seeing your energetic experiences and urges for what they are, seeing the various thought patterns and habit patterns for what they are, recognizing your emotions and treating them with the priority that they require, and seeing them for what they are, and seeing your various egoistic manifestations for what they are, as different roles that you play, and not as not as your identity. Not to lose your identity in any functional structure of the body or the mind or the ego, right? Not to obtain your sense of individuality from the tools of consciousness, which are the body and the mind. Body, prana, mind, intellect, ego, identity, the roles that you play, the situations that we live in, the various experiences we go through. These are all limited structures, limited situations of experience where you don't belong. These all don't define you. You are something else entirely, and seek to know that. So when we develop that objectivity and dispassion towards things and towards our own individuality and identity, objectivity towards our own identity and individuality, that is extremely important. When we have objectivity towards our own individuality and identity, only then we will be able to appreciate the teaching of Vedanta that questions the very validity of your ego, of your individuality. We will be able to see our individuality as mithya, as an illusion, as our function. Our sense of self is only functional. The sense of self that we experience with respect to the life situations, with respect to the body and the mind. I am tall, I am short, I am beautiful, I am ugly, I am fresh, I am not fresh, I am painful, I am pleasure, I am feeling a lot of pleasure, I am happy, I am sad, I am angry, I am satisfied, I am dissatisfied, I am hurt, I feel elated, I feel great. All these things, you know, all these things are pertain to the body, mind, and the intellect and the ego. These are all not me. These are all various manifestations of ignorance. Now that, to treat that, it is not belittling yourself, but it is objectively learning to see what is not you as not you. That is viveka. Anatma nishchaya, mithyatva nishchaya, we say in Vedanta. So for the Vedantic teaching to work, you need to develop this. And to develop this objectivity and dispassion, viveka and vairagya, we need to learn to see the inherent limitations in the situation and experience based happiness which we enjoys that and pleasures that we experience based on this life that we live using the body and the mind. and the various promised experiences that scriptures promise, or your neighbor, your friend from the yoga class who is marketing and new age guru. No, you have to go for that workshop. Oh my God, you know how it feels. We were totally like, my Kundalini was rising, and, we were like totally vibing, and the guru could, make me see all my past life, and, my third eye opened. And then all this marketing they will do. Let it all be, it's lies and or self deception at best, uh, giving all respect to their purity of their intention. Let us call it a self. I will call most of 95% of that is self deception. The rest is probably exaggeration. And even if it is true in a very rare occasion, it has its own limitations. Learn to see it's where it stands. What is its limitation? To be able to see its limitation, you can always come back to the Shastra, and the Shastra will help you. The scriptures and the teachings of Vedanta will help you to put it in perspective and to see it for what it is. That is Bhavasukhe Dosho Anasun. And it has a defect. No matter anything that is achieved in time by effort has a defect. Try to see that defect so that you will know its limitation and not over invest in something for what it is not worth. Right? So that kind of discipline, inner discipline, and discipline in perspective, discipline in approach, that requires some study and some exposure and some discussion. So this kind of discipline will give us the required purity of mind when combined with the right attitude of doing what we need to do. So Kamya Matisthyajatam we discussed. And so what am I supposed to do? Whatever is the essential spiritual practice of purification of the mind that have some kind of that are some kind of benchmarking with the traditional structure that is provided by yoga and Vedanta, that has some kind of a benchmarking with that. So I do it because it needs to be done, because it purifies my mind, and I do it in a worshipful attitude, as an offering to this universe, as an offering for universal harmony, as an offering to God, to Ishvara, whatever is the personal form of divinity that I have chosen. I do this act as an offering for that. Present experience that comes from my pranayama practice or a japa practice or from meditation, immediately I offer it. I don't hang on to it. I don't grab it and try to prolong it. So when I have an offer attitude of offering to God the results of my practice, I will lose my grabbing attitude of the mind, and I will be able to flow with life. I will be able to flow with my practice, this level to the next level to the next level. The progress will be very fast, and I am developing a discipline oriented approach to my spirituality instead of a egoistic approach. I am, or a very result oriented approach where I am always hankering after finding something unique or whatever. Instead of that, I am developing a discipline motivated approach to my spirituality. I do it because it is discipline, it is supposed to be done, and I'm doing it happily as an offering to my Lord. And I'm doing it well because it is an offering to the Lord. So that kind of an impersonal devotional attitude, which is driven by discipline as the motive, when I do my spiritual practices in that way, or everything that is connected with my spirituality, if I do it in that way, while benchmarking the things that I do with the framework and the structure and the wisdom provided by the Vedanta and yoga, when I do it like that, I will be able to develop Chitta Shuddhi no matter which path I am in, provided I take care of these points. Even if I am not doing Vedic practice, it's all right, but I at least follow the points that I have discussed now. Then you will be able to develop the Chitta Shuddhi that is required to give, that is required for giving us the objectivity and the dispassion that is required, that is gained, and that allows us to look into the inherent limitations in time bound, effort based achievements that I call as happiness or joy, the worldly happiness, the worldly joy that also includes spiritual experiences, that also includes attainments after death, right? So I'll be able to develop that integrity, objectivity, and dispassion. When I develop that, I will be able to cultivate the desire for the eternal. When I have cultivated enough desire for the eternal, for liberation, as my exclusive pursuit, I cultivate detachment to my worldly life. I give up looking for support in family, home, and social groups, and my friend circle, or whatever is my circle. I give up. I stop being emotionally dependent upon. I give up my emotional dependency on home. Nijagrihat Turnam Vinirgamyatam. I become ready for a renunciant way of life. What is that? We will explore in the next class. I will address a small question that has been posted, and with that, I will. We have two questions here. One person has asked, Namaste, I have about 8 statues of deities on my altar at home. I think you said in the last class that you would limit it to about 3, but would it be better to spread them out? I did not say that we should limit it to 3. I said there are various recommendations from various people how the original knowledge gets corrupted and people's additions keep changing, and there are so many schools and it is all very confusing. So for that I gave this as an example. So regarding your particular case, we can discuss it, what deities you have, how you have, and why you have. When I have a discussion with you, I will be able to one-to-one discussion with you. I will be able to suggest any changes if they are needed, or if it is okay as it is, and how to go about it. So I will address to you that personally when you discuss with me. Generally, 8 is not a problem, but you have to ask yourself, as when I'm using this question as a context to address everybody, I would say, why am I keeping 8 deities? And in that, what is my Ishtadevata? If this is my Ishtadevata, why I have others? And what is my attitude when I go in front of the altar? What is my attitude towards the various divine forms? And how is it being useful for me, for my progress? So these are the questions one should ask when one is dealing with such a dilemma. Question for the end. Is it useful to understand how the mind ego works? I have been studying a bit psychoanalysis, but it's really about ego mind field. Maybe I am just studying it out of curiosity. It's not really spiritual, but helps to understand the pains of the mind and ego. Now, it sees it is addressing the cause effect analysis of various experiences, but it does not address the source of the problem. So what I will suggest is, it's all right to study psychoanalysis and all that, but it should not become like an astrologer giving alibi. You know what is an astrologer giving an alibi? I had a friend who is an astrologer, excellent astrologer. He will always say, oh, I did this mistake because that planet is looking at retrograde. No, these astrology people, it's, oh, Mercury retrograde 1 month, we're going to have troubles. Oh, I'm having so much of relationship troubles because Mercury is retrograde. Mercury is retrograde, so why don't you shut up? So why don't you stop avoiding unnecessary communication, right? So astrology, in many cases, it's being used as giving for alibi. Similarly, this psychoanalysis and all that has become a tool for finding a comfort zone in what they call as being oneself. Oh, I am ADD, so I am like this, I am like this, I am like this. Oh, I have a test, so I will have more ice cream. You put a label on something, and then that becomes your identity. Then you try to find various comfort zones, and then you try to extract compliance from others to accommodate your problem. You have to constantly walk a tiptoe around these people who have identified a problem. So everybody, it's like women telling, I have periods. So the whole world around should worship me and bow down before me and accommodate all my nonsense because I have periods, 3 days periods. It is important that a woman in periods should be given her comfort zone and all that. But that doesn't mean everybody has to tiptoe around her. So similarly, this psychoanalysis has become like that. So what I would suggest is to study psychology in yoga, especially the theory of kleshas. Avidya, Asmid, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. That klesha theory in Patanjali Yoga Sutra is there. So when you understand the mind, that, and when you understand that, we will develop an objective attitude towards mind as an inner instrument and mind as antakarana, and from a higher perspective of something that is above the mind, which is you. So you don't develop your identity within the mind's structures, but you understand yourself as something that is beyond the mind. You are the reality above the mind, and you understand the mind and its structure in its perspective, and it is your understanding is married to a purpose. Your understanding is married to the purpose of ignorance, the primeval ignorance of the self, finding the not self as oneself. The primeval ignorance being the cause of all the troubles that are created by the mind. So you learn to address that. So that becomes the perspective for understanding. So yoga and Vedanta will give you the perspective in where you can put psychoanalysis and all these mind theories in the rightful place and not be lost into the quagmire of mm, terminological jugglery and ego jugglery and ego massage. Not to get lost into that. So that would be my advice for putting this psychology, Western psychology, in its right place with the and benchmarking it with the structure and purpose and the perspective provided by Vedanta and yoga. So with this, I will conclude the class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat. Thank you. Have a great week, everyone.